Shawn, I'll start with a very simple question. Who is Shawn Lim?
A very simple question, but very hard to answer.
Shawn Lim's story is anything but ordinary. From navigating a troubled youth and finding his way through advertising and journalism to becoming a bold, authentic voice in the B2B creator space, his journey is layered, personal, and real. Today, Shawn is building the human algorithm, a platform born from purpose. He's helping leaders, brands, and communities connect through stories that matter. In this episode of the Unsold Podcast, Shawn and I talk about vulnerability, personal branding, and why every founder, creator, and leader needs to stop renting attention and start owning their voice. This conversation is honest, it's raw, and it's unforgettable. I've spent nearly 8 years in content marketing, helping B2B tech startups create great stories about the product, about people. Now, fortunately, over a couple of years ago, through my client, I discovered somebody who champions personal branding. And that is Shawn Lim, and he's our guest today. It is so clear that B2C has a very big leg up versus B2B in terms of influencers and personal branding. Somehow that hasn't trickled down to B2B, and today's conversation is about that. Over the past few weeks, I have spoken to Shawn at least once, and I've learned pretty much quite a lot about him and his newsletter, his mission, what he stands for, what he wants to drive. But it won't do justice if I keep talking and not allow Shawn to talk. So, Shawn, I'll start with a very simple question. Who is Shawn Lim?
A very simple question, but very hard to answer. I think for me, I'll start by saying I'm a content creator, but I have a background in advertising and journalism. And I started my career in advertising, and then move on to journalism because I love long form content. But now being a content creator means I can combine both, because I need to create my own personal brand, and I need to write as well, and tell stories, right? And so storyteller. So I'm doing both now. Outside of work, I'm a father of a 2-year-old daughter. She's neurodiverse, and we will get into why my platform is built for her in later, I'm sure. But she's neurodiverse, she's non-verbal, and she's going for therapy at the moment. And for me myself, I'm queer, so I'm gender fluid and identify as pansexual as well, and that has helped me to that has been a struggle for me throughout the years, and which is why I'm telling my story of authenticity and vulnerability on social media platforms like LinkedIn and Instagram. Yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
That's fantastic. Actually, the couple of weeks ago when we spoke, you so beautifully articulated your upbringing, and I feel the way you believe as well, that challenges and adversities make great people. Great stories, great backgrounds. That is what makes us good personalities, and that is where you come in, saying we have to sort of leverage all these elements from our life, from our personal as well as professional life, to build this brand, because that eventually builds authenticity.
Yes.
Authenticity leads to trust and credibility, and then it opens up for collaborations of any kind. So what was your upbringing like? I would love our audience to know.
Yeah. So I was born as a Christian. Like when I was born, my parents were Christian already. I didn't have a say. So I grew up around the Bible, going to Sunday school, going to church. That was all I knew, and I was your typical bookworm, typical nerd. And that all changed when I was 10 years old, and I was in a class in school when my teacher asked who didn't bring their homework, and me being the timid and scared bookworm nerd, raised my hand and I stood up, and she started scolding me, and because I was so scared, I started peeing my pants in front of a class of 40 people. And what didn't help was that the guy beside me, my immediate neighbor, he started shouting, teacher peed in his pants. So I had 40 eyes turn and look at me. Uh, so it was my first moment of being vulnerable. And life was never the same after that because I was constantly reminded of the incident. I was bullied. And as I grow older and go into secondary school or high school, uh, I started to I became the bully instead because I wanted to protect myself. Uh, and also because I was starting to realize that I wasn't straight. And it was very uncomfortable because my entire life up to then had been, you know, a man and woman to marry and then that's it. Yeah. So all the traditional society and gender norms made me, start push everything down. I put on mask. I became alpha male. I became I adopted toxic masculinity in that sense that I started going around beating people up. I started asserting my dominance. And all that led me to being arrested at the age of 15 because me and my friends, we were planning to go for a gang fight because we were tired of, bullying and beating people up in school. So we were like, okay, let's do it elsewhere now. But fortunately enough, we were caught before we decided to execute the plan. And as one of the mastermind, I got one of the harshest punishments, which meant that I had to be locked up in a boys' home for a month and then come out and serve 18-month probation, which meant that I had to be home by a certain time. There was a lot of things that I couldn't do. But that didn't stop me from reoffending. I got arrested again at the age of 16, just a few months later for stealing money, stealing items from people in school. And fortunately enough, because in Singapore at 16 you can be tried as an adult already. But fortunately for me, I had a probation officer who fought for me to not go to jail. But also because after the judge, because this time I was charged in an adult court, right? So an adult court meant that I had to be when my parents had to bail me out when the judge gave the sentence of extending my probation. I was in a lockup with fully grown men who were hardened criminals and had reoffended. And because my partner in crime was there with me, he was going around making friends and networking and trying to meet them after everyone got out of the lockup. But for me, I was sitting there and to me, my life was right in front of me because if I didn't change, 5 years down the road, this would be me again. And I remember very clearly one of the guys that was in the cell, he was because everyone gets a phone call, right, to get someone to bail you out. And he was screaming into the phone, scolding his parents because nobody would bail him out. So I was like, that is me if I don't change, and that is me if people give up on me. If I don't you know stop being the alpha male that I was going to be. Yeah, so after that I moved I decided to not because in Singapore you have the N and O level, right? So N level is the first step to O level, and I decided not to take my O level because I wanted to get out of the environment and to change for the better. So I left school with N level and I went to like a technical school in Singapore called IT, where I spent 2 years and I had the best time of my life because I finally had friends that were truly concerned on me. But that also started my journey of self-acceptance and self-love. That I could started to accept myself for who I am, and started healing in the sense that I was forgiving myself for, being such a asshole, and being such a bully. So yeah, so it took me at least a couple of years before I started healing, and when I started healing, it was time to live my life as I wanted it to be in terms of accepting my sexuality, in terms of being able to live authentically. And when I met my wife, she was the first person that I told that I wasn't straight, and she was fully accepting of me. But I still didn't come out. So I had all these masks taken off and everything. But because I was still, I didn't have a purpose to do it, right? And when I became a parent, it was about trying to help my daughter to live authentically in the future. And to do that, I needed to be able to do it myself as well, because up to that point, it was just um another Shawn or another person that was I was pretending to be, even though I had all that past that I learned from. So yeah, so when I became a parent 2 years ago, I started preparing to come out to the world, to come out of the closet. And since then I've been living life as a pansexual person and also a gender fluid person. And now I'm free and I'm ready to help my daughter to not go through the same journey as I did.
It is truly remarkable how you take all of this and accept the fact that this is what you are and boldly take this personality to the world, because eventually that is what builds authenticity. That is the real Shawn, isn't it? That is the real Shawn, what people meet. And by the time you met your wife, I'm sure you were already in a job. Or what, in terms of career, how did you transition? What was your first job like? When
Yeah,
did you
so I
meet her?
started I started as a copywriter. I was in different agencies like Publicist, DDB, where I was creating Facebook content. That at that time there was no Instagram, at that time there was no TikTok. It was just Facebook, and everyone was on Facebook, and it was like creating ads for Facebook, copywriting for Facebook. Yeah, so I didn't really enjoy that. I mean, it's fun to be on social media every day, right? Like it's fun to use Facebook at work, but I always wanted to tell stories through long form content. And I decided after my third agency that I was going to pursue journalism. So I became a sports journalist. It was the best time of my life. Like first time ever. Like I was writing stories. I was interviewing people, interviewing athletes. It was really fun, but unfortunately the fun didn't last, because we my company got bought over by another company, and I got acquired by another company, and after that they decided that we were not profitable, and they decided to let us go. So my first journalism job was cut short in that sense. But I still continue like doing it on a freelance basis, creating content, creating stories, and I joined the drum. So the drum is a advertising trade publication, and at that point of time I didn't know what the drum was, because when I was in agencies, I had no time to read the industry press, doing all the work, right? So when I realized that it was marrying best of both worlds, where I had the knowledge of the industry that I used to be in, and being able to write, I could tell stories of the industry. So I started doing that in 2017, and then for 5 years I was at the drum, and then I joined uh, campaign Asia for 2 years around last year, and then I left to become a content creator.
At this point in time, had you already realized that you have to sort of build and cash in on your personal branding, or when did that sort of change of mindset happen?
Yeah, I guess because as AI became more prevalent, right? Like, you see a lot of news these days about AI replacing your job, AI replacing a lot of the entry level roles as well. I started to think about what I can do next that doesn't you know doesn't require me to be fixed in the box of being a journalist, or being a copywriter, because I had all these skills that I could use. But I also needed to tell my own story, because my brand has always been tied to my publication or my company, and even even then it's always been about, oh, how do I tell make my company look good, or even how do I not post in a way where I'm not you know uh, breaking any social media rules that the company has set. Yeah. So when I started becoming a content creator, I realized that personal branding is the best way to promote yourself without promoting yourself. It's a way of you telling your stories because I had all these stories that I shared earlier, right? About the struggles, about my journey. And I realized that I needed to tell the stories. Because as I was saying, I wanted my daughter to live authentically. And one way of me for doing that, not just changing my, not just declaring that I'm gay and everything, right? But it's also more like um telling my story so that people like her in the future can read about it. And that's where I led into a human algorithm, where I could tell these stories of the underrepresented, marginalized communities that need a voice, whether you are neurodiverse, whether you are queer, whether you are, struggling with your mental health. I wanted to be able to tell these stories. And the best way for me to do is to tell my own story. So that's why I started sharing my own stories, and that became my personal brand of authenticity and vulnerability. And I realized that that's what a lot of people silently struggle with as well. I get all these messages on social media, on LinkedIn especially, of people telling me their struggles with being vulnerable, their struggles with being authentic, whether it's a CEO, whether it's a C-suite exec or even a manager, everyone everyone has been telling me that they struggle with it because when they go to work, when they go to a workplace, they are putting on a mask, and when they leave, they are another person outside of the workplace at home or with their family members.
Right. I think that AI is a very good point you made, because that was a great era of reflection, that change. Because suddenly, because if news could be summarized, stories of informing people about what has happened could be generated through AI, then the next question was, we had to ask us, who am I? What am I? Because if, as a consumer of news, for example, if I go to ESPN to read about football or soccer, I'm sure there are at least a couple of articles generated every day which carries no name of the author or the editor or the journalist. I shy away from it because it's more of summarizing what has happened. If I've already seen the game, I don't want a summary of the game. It's the expert analysis. Who is saying it? Why? What is their starting point? What is their perception? What is their perspective about these things? Then eventually, this is what is making us look inward as well.
Right.
I mean, even in the B2B setup of nearly 8 years of working with founders and leaders in the early and growth stage startups, I mean, these companies are led by some great personalities, but the belief that the personality and the person and the business all merge together, and that is what makes them stand out. In the B2B tech, we always say, oh, what is your product differentiator? How is your product so different? What is your USP? But the same elements apply to people as well, people who run this business, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely true. I feel like there's using AI is not a bad thing, but AI doesn't really know your story, right? AI doesn't know the experiences you go through, and you need to have that business to human language or business to human connection, where especially in B2B, it's a lot of logos, like a lot of brands are trying to talk to their consumers, which is the marketers, which is the business leaders, but they're doing it through the lens of, this is my product, buy from me, it will help you in your job. But that has changed because now you have brands that are using like in-house creators, or even like um, marketing influencers in that sense, that they collaborate with. So you whether it's writing, sponsoring a LinkedIn post, or whether it's doing a branded podcast, or even doing a video series. Yeah, there are so many ways that you can show your face without being over promotional about your products, because if you can create that human connection, like if you're a company, you definitely need to use, like, I feel like the in the next few years, every company needs to have their staff as a role model or as
Yes.
an ambassador of the company, because it's no longer just using your logos or your brands. Like if you look on LinkedIn now, the company posts are deprioritized, and it's mostly the humans that are posting, that you see the post first, that in the way the algorithm shows you. So if you stop, if you don't prioritize using your employees as the face of your brand, then you are you're just missing the noise, or you cannot overcome the noise, because it's the attention economy now. Like every minute counts, or every second.
That is true. I think in a world, I think B2B, most of marketing and sales has become so commoditized. I feel when the world becomes extremely commoditized, authenticity gets sacrificed. We tend to ignore. And also, there is a lot of fear because championing your staff, your internal leaders, if I can say that, is a cultural mindset. I mean, if the company has a culture like that setup, naturally it will give them autonomy and freedom to senior leaders within the company to voice their opinion and have an opinion, for Christ's sakes, to begin with. But in B2B, from what you have seen from the companies you have interacted with, where do you think is this culture missing? Why do companies hesitate to create that fertile ground where they give autonomy and freedom to their senior leaders within the company and say, go have a voice, please be a representative of our brands? Because eventually the transaction is between a person and a person, people and people.
Yeah. Because I think because there's a couple of things there. Because one of the things is there's this old mindset, old mentality that if an employee use LinkedIn, right, it's to look for jobs, or they are trying to outshine the company. So a lot of company have that mentality that if my employees start talking or start sharing stuff on LinkedIn, someone else will start to hire them. I will lose this employee after training them for so long, building them up, and now they are trying to outshine me. But that's the wrong mentality, because if your employee is well followed or has enough followers, they will gravitate towards their followers will gravitate towards your brand, because they will start to identify with these influencers or creators that are working for a brand. And if you stop your employee from doing that, then they will be unhappy, because they have a voice that they need to share. And then the next thing is also because I feel that they put a lot of profits over their employees. So, our business need to be profitable first. And that leads to, all this return to office mandates, very strict working hours and all that, right? So that needs to change as well, because if the company doesn't, like, I always find it funny that the company, if a company calls their employees family, because you don't treat your family like this. I'm sure you don't treat your family like this, right? So for me, it's a red flag is if a company call their staff family, because ultimately you need to treat your staff well, give them a voice, have the trust in them that they are not bashing your brand or anything. So to me, ultimately, I feel if the employee is promoting their campaigns or promoting insights to a business idea on LinkedIn that is related to that company, and it's not like bad mouthing the company, I feel that's okay. Yeah.
That is true. I think this boils down to a conversation you had, a newsletter on your human algorithm newsletter, where you spoke to a gentleman and talked about educating about CSR. Am I right?
The
me pull back.
sustainability one. About sustainability.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sustainability, exactly. I think it's not that you cannot drive profits this way, being extremely sustainable, but it's just that we have to really trust, and there should be a lot of education. So taking the example from that conversation you had on human algorithm, even here, since putting profits before people has always been the norm. And probably
Yes.
most of the businesses will continue doing that. But the ones who truly want to stand out and say, you know what? It is because of our people. Our product is good. Because of our product and people, our customers are happy. And hence, this is how I will prioritize, or this is how we will prioritize. I mean, you still can be extremely profitable by allowing the inside voices within your company to build their own personal brands. I think there are a lot of education. I think that is where influencers and creators like you uh, stand with a voice of authority and experience, and you educate the entire market. I think that bit has to really kick in, because the opportunity is there in front of both kinds of people. One, obviously, all as individuals, be as consultants or employees of a large organization or a startup, or even the employer, the businesses, the business leaders. The opportunity is right in front of us. I mean, as a business, I can identify influencers and creatives in my domain and start engaging with it to truly understand the authentic impact of working with an influencer or a creator. At the same time, even individually, we have to figure out that no, I have to tell my story. What is my story? And build our personal brand. But I'm on this journey. So it's about a year and a half or 2 years ago, I realized the business is business, but who is the face of the business? It is me and my partner in the business. And I started developing this brand. I think education is also necessary, Sean, where there is no university course, there is no sort of conventional education. We have never been educated on these things about how to carry yourself, how to build your brand. But I think, as you mentioned, the kind of education you give yourself about taking courses or following the right people. I mean, I follow you and I picked up a lot of points from you. And you follow a bunch of people where they help you in building a personal brand and especially monetizing it authentically. Build that gap. I think education is a very important need.
Yeah,
Wouldn't you
I
say?
think, especially there's this term now on social media called doom scrolling, right? That you are scrolling
Yeah.
and you're just looking at people dancing, singing. And I would say that I recently learned of this term called intentional scrolling. So you train your algorithm, whether on TikTok, whether on Instagram.
Right.
You are learning from creators who are building businesses, who are sharing their struggles, who are sharing their failures, and that's called intentional scrolling, because you are not just looking at the next trend, looking at the next dance. You are actually learning something from your feed, and that's very powerful. And podcasts like yours and mine as well, it's a way to learn as well. It's a way for me to learn things that I will never learn in school. And within that 40 minutes or within an hour, I pick up so much knowledge that inspires me. I read books that helps me to think outside the box. That's all. That's food for the brain, I would say.
Right. That is true. I think, as far as individuals are concerned, like we had a conversation a week or two ago, and you were talking about how you want to uh, articulate what you have learned in terms of helping people to build their brands, in terms of our downloadable masterclass or a community driven class. I think that sort of sits perfectly where, when people like you, a person of authority and a lot of following, which means you've built a great personal brand and people have resonated with you, and there is a clear path, somewhere there has to be something tactical for people to understand, okay, this is where I have to start, even to identify why they are different. And then this is how I have to articulate and slowly build this into a personal brand. Um, while we can talk about human algorithm and your future plans of how you want to help people as well as the business side on personal branding and personal stories, can you briefly talk to us about, let's say, if anybody walks up to you and say, Sean, how do I start personal branding? What do I do? What would you say?
I would say that even so, I love LinkedIn as a platform. But I will say that every social media platform, you are just renting the audience because you are not you don't own the audience. The platform own the audience, and you might disappear off LinkedIn, you might disappear off TikTok, and then what happens? You lose your audience, right? So you need to create a product, a digital product, whether it's a newsletter, whether it's a podcast, where you own the audience, where you have a audience that is, committed to waiting for your content to drop or waiting for you to write a newsletter. And that to me is personal branding because I see LinkedIn as a channel to to drive into my platform, my human algorithm platform, because having uh email list or email database is a very powerful thing. And you can't get emails off LinkedIn unless you like start selling code, you send code DMs or you start being promotional and salesy, and that turns people off, right? So you need to be able to divert people off a social media platform or platforms that are driven by algorithms into your product, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a newsletter, so that you essentially own the audience, you essentially can be able to build that community, and ultimately that is what your brand, whether it's Santosh or whether it's Shawn, should be able to be identified with. I want people to see me and say, you are the founder of Human Algorithm, not or you have 17,000 followers on LinkedIn. That to me is not important. For me, I want Human Algorithm to be the forefront of what people think of me. So that's my brand. LinkedIn is just a channel for me to funnel into that.
Correct. Fair enough. I think one struggle which I went through is, what is that voice I should be able to articulate, regardless of the platform, be it LinkedIn, Insta, TikTok, etc. Is the one thing what I figured out is there are two things. One, what is the one thing or few things that I strongly believe in that is a little contrarian, that goes against the grain of whatever is happening in the industry? That is one. Sometimes even this can be a very common opinion, or this can be shared by many people. It's truly difficult to actually have or believe in something which is so contrarian that nobody else believes. Sometimes we will be lost in a sea of noise, but that is still okay. But to truly understand, this is what I believe. It can be a thing about telling the entire audience set, saying we have been doing things a certain way, but here is a point, we have to think about it differently because of A, B, and C. And that becomes a starting point to develop that young embryonic, personality about us. That is the inner personality anyway. Then it becomes a point of, okay, how can I articulate it? Or let me start writing, because that's the easiest thing. Because imagine setting up a camera, audio and video, that takes some effort. For some people, a lot of effort, especially given time and skill set. But to immediately, if we need proof, I would say I would start writing every day and see what kind of messages, what perspectives stick with the audience, and how many of that is actually building my following. More than following, like you said, it is about people saying yes or no in comments. Actually, that is what gives us immediate feedback about if I am right or if I am wrong. If I'm right, which is good, then I'm resonating with people and I'm attracting people, then I can captivate them and on and switch to Substack like you do with Human Algorithm or the podcast. Like you said, we don't want to rent audiences. And then if I'm wrong, fantastic, I'm going to learn many things. I was saying this year, I wrote so many times about these themes. And in fact, you know what, about half of them, I really needed to learn and unlearn a lot of things, which means I've improved as a person. That again becomes a personalized story anyway. But I think one hesitation which I've seen with people is, what if I'm wrong? What if I say something which comes out so stupid and my investors or my audience, if I'm representing a business, something say, oh, you know what, this person's opinion is wacky, and that might internally sort of trickle down and affect the actual brand, the business brand. And also, like you said, for business leaders and founders, they feel, oh, what if I get my employees poached? Or what if they go rogue and start writing about stuff which is so out of brand,
Yeah,
right? So
definitely.
this is
I agree.
quite common.
I
Yeah.
totally agree with you about writing because, you know, before you set up the tripod, before you press play, you need a script. You need to write your answers, right? And that requires writing. And whether you write a newsletter or podcast or social media post, that requires writing. And you know, some people look at LinkedIn. Everything you write is writing. So you write an email, you write a WhatsApp text, is writing. But when people see LinkedIn at your post here, they start to freeze. They it looks like a monster to them. They forget how to write.
Right.
They start
Right.
they start they I know a lot of people that start writing and then they
Yeah.
delete everything. Because they like
Yeah.
what will people think of me? What will, like you say, what will
Right.
my bosses, investor think of me? But I would
Right.
say write with someone in mind. When you write an email, right? When you write a text, right, you are talking to one person or maybe a few person in is it a group chat or somebody else in your email. And think of it like writing a text, writing to a friend, writing an email. Why is it so different? And so you need to, if you can send the email, you can send that LinkedIn post or you can send that Instagram post. So you need to write with an audience in mind. And for me, for example, I write with my daughter in mind. Like, well, like 10 years down the road, she will read my LinkedIn post and you will say, yes, I agree with this. I identify with this. So write with someone in mind.
Right. That is so true, actually. And also, in terms of video creation, I think 2019 and that pandemic time, I think it switched focus towards video content significantly. It's not that video content did not exist before in the B2B context, but I think since then it has taken a trajectory onto its own. And I have figured out something personally that at least I am, and many Indians, this might be generalizing, and people might say, oh, that's not a very common thing. But not all of us are completely confident and comfortable in front of a camera. The one thing I commonly hear people say is that once a video is shot, I don't want to see myself. I don't want to hear myself.
Yeah.
I hate my voice. Is this how I sound?
Yeah, yeah.
No, no, please don't ask me to rewatch this video, but just tell me if it is good. I think the current generation, however, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they are very confident because they are growing up on Instagram Reels,
Yes.
Snapchat, Share Chat, the India's version of TikTok. Now, young kids or young employees are no longer shy. They are confident. They are born and brought up this way. And which means one barrier of forcing somebody to get in front of a camera in a business setup no longer exists with younger employees. It's just a matter of creating that fertile culture where they say, okay, every Friday, let's do uh, behind the scenes of how our office is or how we do stuff. And people are naturally sort of very comfortable facing the camera.
Yeah. I think, and every video when you start, it will be cringe. It definitely will be cringe. It'll be like, I hate my voice, I hate myself. Once you start to accept that, once you get that out of the way, then it becomes natural. You put in the reps, you get the result, right? So for me, for example, before I started filming my podcast, I started shooting my podcast. What I did was I just switched my phone on and I just started recording. Like I didn't know what I wanted to say, so I talk about everything under the sun: marketing, gender equality, the latest news. So it was just practice for me, and whether I get the likes or whether people liked it or not, I didn't care because I wanted to practice. Shooting myself, seeing myself in the camera, seeing myself, hearing myself in the
That is true.
camera, and you can just get a $5 mic, $7 mic, and just practice it. obviously once you get better, you upgrade your mic, upgrade your production, and all that. But it's very easy. You have a phone, you have a mic, and you can just talk about anything. Like I've seen on TikTok, like this person, she does her entire podcast on TikTok. So she's just
Wow.
talking for 10 minutes on the podcast on TikTok. And
Yeah.
that's her channel. So anybody can do it. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so true. I think there is also this Jekyll and Hyde kind of a personality to each one of us. We overestimate ourselves at the same time we underestimate. So let me explain what I mean by that. Overestimate meaning the moment we see ourselves on camera and we hear our own voice, we feel, come on, I don't sound really that bad. In fact, in real life, that is how we sound. Somehow we expect the mic to capture us like Chris Martin from Coldplay. And at the same time, we underestimate ourselves in saying, you know what, I don't sound good, I don't look good, and I better shy away from doing these things. But I think at the end of the day, like you said, it is just about practice. In the good old days in my school and college for elocution and debate competitions, where students had to stand and face a crowd of like 500. We were always told to stand in front of the mirror and look at us talk, look at us smile, how we twitch, how we stand, how we nod, do our shoulders droop like this. So that kind of gave us immediate feedback. And the same thing applies today. It's just the medium of how all of this is captured has changed. And it's become very easy, like you said. The mics are cheap. Our phones come with great cameras which can capture good quality video. And how much does a bunch of lights cost? Not much. So everything is there for us to get
Yeah,
the same. But I think the new generations.
I agree. Like what some people don't realize is sometimes your video shouldn't be over scripted or over edited.
Yes.
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 The videos that do very well, because it used to be about who has the best transition, who has the best effects, right? But now, if you go on Instagram or TikTok, people are just talking while they're walking, people are talking while they're eating, people are talking when they're in their bed. So it's that kind of personal story, the storytelling with a hook, right? Anything can be a hook now. Like I can eat while I'm talking and all that. That's a hook as well. So gone are the days of overly edited, overly produced videos, and now storytelling has come back to become the key element where there needs to be a hook.
Right. That is true. And also, the people surrounding us, our well-wishers, family, friends, acquaintances, colleagues. There is this I've encountered where I attend events and they ask me what I do, and I tell them part of what I do is manage a podcast. I use that to connect with people, to invite them to get to know their stories and background. And the next question obviously is, oh, how are you monetizing it? Oh, how much have you invested? Or do you have your own studio? Do you have these big cameras like how ESPN studios or CNN used to do? So there is this outside perception of how a podcast is supposed to be, because in India and also everywhere else, there are podcasts produced so beautifully, so crisply, that they are no less than a television production of a show, like Oprah. But at the same time, at the end of the day, if people can hear you, if people can understand you properly, if you're visible in proper lighting, I think these three things should be more than sufficient to tell your story. Obviously, as and when you monetize, you can improve these things.
Yeah, definitely. Like the content is important. So if your content doesn't make sense, how many transitions you have in your video, how many sound effects, how many video effects, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. People scroll past. Because like I said earlier, it's the attention economy. What you say and what your content produces, the quality matters. So if you want to start with talking about great content and putting out things that people have never heard before or from your own perspective.
Yeah.
That doesn't need sound effects or transitions. Yeah.
That is true. Talking about effects and transitions, I have this fear, because we all have this habit of at night we are sleeping on the bed and we are just doom scrolling Instagram or TikTok, And when all the lights are off and only my phone is on, and suddenly these transitions where there are bright lights and jump cuts, and suddenly I started getting seizures looking at. So sometimes it can be overdone, but it need not be. The simpler, the better.
Because you like I say, mindful scrolling, right? Like you want to learn. Like I'm not gonna learn anything from beautiful transitions, beautiful sound effects.
That is true.
I'm gonna learn from your
That is true.
content. That's ultimately why we create content.
Yeah. And Shawn, tell me something. As you are, since the past 2 years, since you kickstarted Human Algorithm, I'm sure you've picked up a lot of lessons and tricks of the trade in terms of how to present yourself and how to create content, be it writing, setting up on Substack, your newsletter, as well as LinkedIn, your podcast, figuring out where to shoot. We were talking about just the other day about how you have this cute little setup where you can rent out a place where you can record your podcast. And all of these things, it's not that this information is not available. Of course it is, but it is up to you to figure out how to acquire these skill sets. Do you ever feel overwhelmed and saying, oh, there is so much to learn, I could be so much better, I could make this so beautiful? Do you ever feel overwhelmed?
No, actually, because I I feel the best way to learn is to do what you learn. So as you can read all the books, you can listen to all the podcasts, you can do all the courses, but if you don't start doing, you will never learn. And everybody's business, content create as a content creator or influencer, whether you are if you have a podcast or newsletter, your direction of your business will be different because all of us have different aims, different goals in mind. But unless you start doing, you won't be able to correct your mistakes, or you won't be able to learn. And I think like the biggest creators that I look up to, for example, like Dan Cole or even Justin Walsh, their mantra is to start doing first before you read the tutorials, before you read the courses. Because if you don't start trying, then you won't know where your pain points are. And then once you start to build and once you start to scale, and then you realize that you are stuck or you have a pain point, go to the tutorials, go to the podcast, start listening, and then fine tune it. Because by then you should be able to know where your pain points are, which one you can solve. Because if you start reading all the courses, you start doing all the tutorials, listen to all the podcasts, and then you have this overload of information, and that paralyzes you to a point where you don't know what to do, you don't know where to start. You'll be like, oh, I need to start newsletter, I need to start podcast, I need to start personal branding. Oh no. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, I just carry on with my 9 to 5 job. I don't start.
That is true. That is true. I think the other side of personal branding is obviously we have spoken about how if we have to truly stand out as a consultant or an employee or whatever roles we play every day, then obviously we have to develop and establish a personal brand, and so that we can monetize it in the future. The other half is also from the business side of things. We want businesses to actually identify and work with creators and influencers, because there is supply. We are championing, we are educating people. You are extensively about why you should build personal branding, but we also need companies to step out of their shells and say, you know what, besides the conventional thing I do in Google ads and Meta ads and LinkedIn ads, putting banner ads on publications relevant, but it's also, they also should take a step forward, and only then this hard work gets recognized, correct?
Yes, but I will say that they wouldn't know who you are until you start building your own personal brand. So for example, like I there's this term that I heard recently was nothing happens and then everything happens. So you can, when you first start building your personal brand, right? You are just talking to everyone. You don't know who you're talking to. You're just trying out content and everything. And then you don't know what sticks, what doesn't work. and then you keep trying, and you get one like, you get two like, you get three views, that kind of thing. But keep going. Consistency is key. So for me, because I spend the months putting the rest, putting the practice and building my own personal brand, nothing happened at a point of time, but everything is happening now. Like I'm on this podcast telling you because I've been building my personal brand, right? And the last 3 weeks, I've
Right,
been on
that's
different panels talking about
right.
building my own personal brand as well. So
That's
nothing happens, and then everything happens. And now they're
then
like,
else.
yeah, and then now
Yes.
there are companies that are
Still,
reaching out to me, uh, asking to sponsor my LinkedIn post, asking to start a podcast series with me. So everything is happening now because nothing happened at the start when I started posting. So you need to have that consistency, and it's not like after 1 week I get 5 likes for each of my posts and then I give up.
uh,
Yeah.
that,
Then you disappear back into the
that
noise. So you need to stay
is,
consistent. You need to trust that your
yeah.
process work and that you're reaching the right target audience, and then everything will happen after that.
Fantastic. I think it's remarkable about where you've started and where you are today. And I think I want to close this conversation, such a beautiful, deep conversation about human algorithm and your legacy. You talked about your daughter Mallory and the kind of legacy you want to leave behind. So, a few years down the line, when she grows up into a very strong, beautiful woman, what do you want human algorithm to be to her? And before that, why human algorithm?
So I'll answer the last question first. So why human algorithm is because as algorithms take over our life, like we discussed earlier, right? Or we don't own our audience on the platforms. We rent the audience, and the algorithms are in charge of that, right? So as humans, I wanted my platform to show that humans are still in charge, and humans, you need humanity, you need the authenticity and vulnerability to be able to tell stories, tell your own journey. And for example, so this week on one of the stories that I published is around rental flats in Singapore. So rental flats in Singapore are for the low income households. And I was speaking to this mother of five, and her kids live in the living room. So it's a very small space. For those who don't know about rental flats in Singapore, it's a very small space. Her kids sleep in the living room, and then she has a room, and she has no space for a fridge. She has to go into a room. So it's hard to live like that, and there are a lot of these stories that go that are ignored, or are not the front of mind because everyone is concerned about Lady Gaga coming to Singapore. So you yeah. So it's that kind of stories that I want to tell that raise awareness, because she's working with a charity foundation that is trying to raise money to buy new items for her. So I told that story on my platform because my audience is business leaders, marketers, C-suite execs that can impact change, that can create change. And ultimately, further down the road, when my daughter reads about stories like this, and stories that will emerge over the next few years, I want her to be able to say that uh, even though I'm neurodiverse, or even though I'm nonverbal, I'm still able to relate to these people, that I relate to their vulnerability, authenticity, because it's better to start from young to learn. And I'm speaking from personal experience, right? It's better to start from young, where you are able to empathize with people, be able to create that connection with people, create that love for helping others, rather than doing it when you are much older. Yeah. So
That is true.
yeah, that's what I want my platform to be.
Nice. I think I would recommend anybody listening or watching this episode. Human algorithm is a fantastic platform to read great stories, very impactful stories. And also added to that is obviously the podcast where you can actually see two people talking about real things, about real life, and trying to make an impact. I think that is a fantastic platform which you have built. And Shawn, I wish for more such conversations, more such great stories, and keep telling us, keep educating us, and keep inspiring us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And how did you find the conversation?
Oh, it's great. Like, I think the questions you asked, I think you asked more questions than the one you sent me, right? Like, I really enjoy it, but I think there were a lot more questions that, I really enjoy it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Shawn. And
thank you for having me.
When I'm in Singapore, I want to have another conversation with you and see where we both are in our own journeys, and talk about a lot more stories and conversations.